studio. Happy New Year. We're back. Welcome to 2022. It's one of these things that we've been looking at the news, paying attention to what's been going on. And we thought that it would be good for us to kind of come back and talk about January 6th.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember the exact date. It might have been 2 days after January 6th of 2021, where Kevin and I were sitting in the studio and we talked about how I felt that the Patriots, if we want to call everybody Patriots, had kind of given the keys to the kingdom to the left because of what happened on January 6th. It's deplorable. It's something that we would hope that we would never see again. It shouldn't have happened that day. But when we get down to the truth of it, nobody wants to talk about the truth. And I kind of have a story to tell here because I kind of wanted to tell you how I've been in a situation like this to where you kind of wonder what is really truly going on in the background. I'm going to give you a story, Kevin. And anyway, this is my partner, Kevin, over here.
Hi, everybody.
Say hello, Kevin.
Yeah, hello, Kevin.
So I kind of wanted to tell a story about something that personally happened to me. When I was with the Norfolk Police Department, I was taking a person out to help them learn how to shoot a gun. And as I was going into the range, I heard automatic rifle fire. I mean, you can distinctly tell the difference between somebody that has a fast finger with a semi-automatic to a fully automatic weapon. And as I walked in the door, the gun owner knew that I was a police officer and kind of looked at me and said, "Oh, hey, did you hear?" I said, "When did we start firing automatic weapons?" And he goes, "Yeah, these guys had been waiting for a long time to get their tax and all these different things like this. And we're really excited about, shooting this fully automatic machine gun." So he says, maybe they'll let you, shoot it when you get inside. Well, when I walked in and looked at it, they were dressed in Nazi uniforms and shooting a German World War II style fully automatic machine gun.
They were dressed as Nazis?
They were dressed as Nazis. German. When
That's
I say
a local gun range.
Yeah, this is a local gun range. Now, when I should not. Let's just say German soldiers. Okay. I don't remember if I saw SS anywhere.
Were they American or were they Germans?
They were Americans.
Okay.
They were two American knuckleheads. And so after I kind of went down to the other end and I was helping this person shoot, and I just kept kind of watching these guys, and finally they finished up and went outside. Well, they were sitting outside talking. When I walked outside, one of them says, and he looked at me, directly at me, and he goes, "Shooting at a target is one thing, but shooting at a person is another thing." That's what, and it was like he really wanted to try it out, he really wanted to try it out.
He wanted to shoot at a person.
Yeah. So as I was leaving, I noticed that they had a training room that said, something to the fatherland, praise to the fatherland, something like that. So anyway, I went back to the office and I did what we called a special incident report, where I just filled out this of what I had observed. See something, say something. There might not be anything to this at all, but it just hit me as
it's good to have it on record.
Yeah. So about 3 months later, I get a call from our Central Intelligence Unit, and they said, "Hey, we want to talk to you about what this little incident report that you wrote up." And I said, "Okay, fine." ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, or the Bureau of Alcohol, had picked up the owner of this gun store because he bought a whole bunch of cheap 9mm and was selling them, and they caught him selling some underneath the counter, not doing the paperwork and stuff like this. So they pull him into the office and they sit down and they talk with him. One of our guys happens to be walking by the office and sees this guy because they had kind of done a little bit of an investigation on him, and they step in and they said, "Hey, ask him about the German uniforms and stuff like that." And so they asked him, he says, "Yeah, we like to play war games. We have this little group that gets together on weekends and we dress up in our uniforms and we recreate battles and things like that." And so he says, "Yeah, we talk about a whole bunch of things like how we would kill President Clinton, how we would assassinate President Clinton."
And this is in Florida?
This is in Virginia. This is in Virginia.
Okay.
Everything came to a complete halt. Here this guy goes, "Yeah, we talk about how we would kill, if he came to Norfolk, how we would assassinate him." And they just like I said, everybody just said, whoa, wait a minute here. So it was the federal building where they were located. They contacted Secret Service, had Secret Service come down. The Secret Service agent comes in and says, "Hey, did you just say that y'all have this plan of killing, President Clinton?" He goes, "Oh yeah, it's real." It's not that hard to do. You know, it's not really that complicated. You know, we would stake out these buildings, and the guy goes, "You're just joking, aren't you?" And he's going, "Well, no. I mean, you know, we're just patriots, you know." Well, of course, the next thing you know, they charge this clown with, you know. Now, everybody that he's involved with goes, "This guy's nuts." He gets drunk and starts talking about these things, but we've never, you know, we've never in our lives thought anything about killing President
That's
Clinton.
what the other guys said.
That's what you know, like they round these guys up because now you got a conspiracy and all these things like this.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, wait a minute. Whoa, time out. He's nuts," you know. And come to find out, the guy was a little off.
Mm-hmm.
But the scary thing about that, in an administration like we have right now, you probably would have seen charges on these people just because they were a part of that militia.
Right.
Understand what's going on here.
So this was some kind of Virginia right-wing militia, and this guy somehow.
He's kind of one of the leaders because he has the gun store and the ammunition and the guns.
So he's got his
like that.
FFL and he's a little unbalanced.
Yeah, he is a little. That's a good word.
It doesn't make me feel any better.
It doesn't make us feel any better at all. So the thing that concerns me is that we take a look at January 6th, and you and I both agree that it's a terrible thing that happened.
Right.
Biden comes out today, and I'm just reading I have not heard the speech. I'm just reading what different people are saying. But Biden fuels division by launching an attack on Trump in January 6th anniversary speech. And they just go off and, you know, they truly blame what they call a riot or insurrection, whatever you want to call it, of January 6th on Trump and, of course, the radical right, which when you think about it, you and I could be considered radical right because of the way. Now, do we promote rioting and destruction or anything like that? No, of course not. We never have. We never will. We promote a Christian point of view on this. But the thing that concerns me is that he is fueling fire again, not how can we heal. You know, you had the Civil War where brother fought against brother, and Abraham Lincoln's plan before he was assassinated was to heal this country, was to bring the country back together. And it truly seems like we do nothing but constantly try to divide this country. And the other thing that we do is that we point fingers at each other and talk about how bad the other party is instead of just sitting down and having a good conversation. Democrats have planned, this is what this newspaper article said, Democrats have planned to use the speech, as their kickoff to pass election legislation. In other words, they don't want the states to run their own elections anymore.
Right. They think the federal government should have oversight, at least over.
Should do this.
Yeah.
And, of course, we saw what happened when they did it last time. Now, excuse me, you may believe that there was some corruption in the election. I'm sorry. You still, to this day, you are not going to tell me that Joe Biden got that many votes without something being wrong. You cannot convince me of that.
Well, I have to agree with you that it seems to me that I think, by the way, for the record, I think they did cheat. Now, did they cheat so much that they turned the election? I don't know. But the idea that Biden got more votes than Obama did, I find that hard to believe, except that enough people hate Trump that maybe it worked, right? But here's the problem, and you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. A couple of things. First of all, what words they use does matter.
Yes.
Because an insurrection holds legal and political meaning as opposed to riot, right?
Right.
They are outraged by what happened on January 6th, and I share their outrage to some extent.
All of us do.
Are they not selectively outraged?
Right.
They were quiet, in fact, encouraging of the riots all summer long in cities all around the country. They were perfectly okay with that. In fact, if you look at January 6th, if I was the cynical type, I would say, where does it say that protests have to be peaceful? To quote our friend on CNN.
Yeah.
Well, it says it in the
Mr.
Constitution.
Lemon himself. Yeah.
No, it was Como.
Como.
Yeah.
Como said.
So It was it's interesting. So we look at it from the right and we say, well, it was mostly peaceful. But that's kind of how they look at the riots over the summer, and they probably were mostly peaceful. In other words, I know a lot of people that went to protests here locally in Tampa Bay and didn't burn anything, or I don't know that we even had that stuff here, did we?
We did have some protests. I don't think
we didn't have any fires.
It was shut down quick.
Yeah, we didn't have fires and stuff here.
You and I always say this. We're very happy that we live here in Florida.
Yeah, most of the Florida law enforcement would not just stand down, even if the governor or the mayor told them to. And you're probably not going to find that very often in Florida. But anyway, there were a lot more protests. Here's the thing: they're outraged by January 6th because it suits their political agenda, their political narrative. They haven't stopped talking about January 6th, and Merrick Garland says he's just getting warmed up. It's been a year later, and we just looked at some of the stats for the investigation so far, but it's on video. So how much investigation do we need? And it's not the first time that Congress was interrupted politically. It's just the first time it happened on the right.
Right. Well,
so we've had people from the left go in and disrupt the congressional hearings and congressional proceedings, and it wasn't an insurrection. So they're saying essentially that the people with the guns went to overthrow the government without their guns, and then left quietly, took some selfies and left quietly for the most part.
Right.
And but then they need that. That's a riot. That's against the law. It's a lot of bad things, but it's not an insurrection, and it doesn't lead to sedition, like Mayor Garland is wondering how long till he can. In this article from who's this by? CBS News,
of course.
He's saying Merrick Garland, who is the head of the Department of Justice, Attorney General, saying that talking about the resources they poured into this so far, which is ridiculous for what January 6th really was. And then one thing says here, where is it? Those are the craziest. Let me put it on the screen for people so they can see it. So there's been more than 140 prosecutors being paged and have charged more than 725 individuals off of this January 6th thing, 5,000 subpoenas and search warrants, 2,000 seized devices. They've reviewed 20,000 hours of video and fielded more than 300,000 tips from the general public. And then they talk about some of the charges that have been leveled already. But this line here is, yet the department, and this is CBS News, not Merrick Garland saying this, but yet the department has not yet brought any sedition charges to bear, pursued sentencing enhancements for apparent domestic terrorist crimes. So that is, I think they are being very selective in their outrage. And we should be outraged by this, by the way, but we should also be outraged by our behavior as a nation all summer long. Let's stop with the hypocrisy. It's embarrassing.
Right. Well, the Western Journal, who I kind of went out and looked and found, and I'm not for sure what side of the fence the Western Journal is. To me, they seem very fair here because they did a comparison between the riots that happened during the summer and the Capitol, and they called it an incursion. Okay, so I'm not really for sure exactly what they're meaning by that, but it is a disruption. It is something that shouldn't have happened, that completely took everything out of whack. But they said that the Capitol incursion netted, federal authorities roughly said 570 arrests, people with no criminal record who were taken into custody for assembling in Washington in January have often told stories of being detained for months or longer simply for having been there. And others have shared other horror stories from inside the jail. But arrested people in the rioting in urban America, in many cases, were picked up and released.
Yeah. And so they're talking in this case they're talking insurrection, and they're talking sedition, treason.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm somebody that is very suspicious of the 2020 election. So everybody has said, a lot of politicians and a lot of guys that I like, Ben Shapiro, for instance,
right.
What's the guy Tim Pool I tend to watch every day or once pretty regularly, said that there was no cheating in the election or it wasn't a stolen election. I don't know exactly what their sentiment, but I think they did cheat in a lot of ways, or at least they made it look like they were cheating. So is it was it all a setup? Did they do all the strange things? We were saying back then, this is a terrible election to be doing all this experimenting with the election process. This is a terrible election to be overriding, to have the governors override the state senate in terms of what our election laws in any given state might be. So it seemed to me that if I can figure that out, that this is a bad time to be experimenting with our electoral process. How did they not figure it out? Was it a setup? Did they want those Trump supporters to think something was amiss and hopefully act like this?
Well,
I mean, conspiracy theory-wise, makes sense.
There's a whole bunch of things they wanted Trump supporters to think. I mean, listen, as we said last year, January 2021, we gave the keys to them because of what happened. Now, I'm going to take a step back because I happen to have Fox Nation, and I've happened to seen Tucker's thing on purging of patriots, which I found interesting, but I didn't find went deep enough as far as I'm concerned. I think that there needs to be more in this. I don't know that there wasn't people in the background that were trying to cause this to happen, and yet they weren't far-right wingers.
So there was the allegation was made that a lot of the people that fired this crowd up, or that even entered the Capitol. Now, let's face it, most of them didn't enter the Capitol. So statistically, it was a mostly peaceful protest. But some of them did enter the Capitol, and a lady was killed in the Capitol. But they're saying that a lot of the guys that were leading that riot have led riots all summer in different parts of the country. So they might have been affiliated with Antifa. The guy with the buffalo head, maybe, or that. Well, no, those guys.
No, there were two guys that they pointed out in this the series, and it's a good series to go watch. Like I said, I felt like they didn't go deep enough. I think there really needs to be an investigation into it. They had video of these guys standing outside, not the guy with I mean, both of them looked normal people, but both of them are saying we need to go into the Capitol and storm the Capitol. And you hear people around them going, no, that's not the way to do this. And he's getting other people fired up to do this. We do not know the people that started this or really was involved in this. It was not all planned out there. You want a conspiracy? Go study this. Go look at it. Go look at the video and the different things like that. All the video that is out there, if you can find it, listen to the people that are standing in the background going, stop it, stop it, stop it. People that were with Trump that heard about it and went down to the Capitol to stop it because on one end of the Capitol was a peaceful protest. On the other end of the Capitol, this was happening.
Right.
And they were trying to stop it. There were so many people out there that were against this. One guy that they showed in this Patriot Purge, they showed him that he was there, and the next thing you know, a crowd starts going forward, and he's on his cell phone recording himself saying, I'm trying to back out of this. I'm trying to get out of this. But this crowd had pushed him forward. He goes, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. They had arrested him. They have released him. But he was here's the problem I have about this guy, and I'm going to be fair on both sides. Once he gets inside, he finds Pelosi's office and goes in and sits in her office.
Oh, yeah, I saw that guy.
Yeah, gets a picture taken of himself. Well, dude, you just messed up as far as I'm concerned. You're kind of putting yourself into a situation where you're probably going to get charged.
Well, let me ask you this. I saw violence outside of the doors on one side. And then I saw cops. I saw a video of cops letting people in saying, I don't agree with it, but you have the right to come in. So then the question becomes, were they rioting on one side and peaceful on the other side? And what did they do once they got in there? Did they stole stuff, right? Didn't they walk away with the like a podium but did they set fires? Did they?
No.
What did they do once they were in there?
Yeah, they took selfies. took video.
Yeah.
Sat in chairs. There was no fires. There were no deaths. The only death because listen.
Well, the cops didn't arrest 1,000 people. They left on their own, right?
Right.
The Army didn't come in and push them out or anything like that.
But in text tweets that were sent out about this terrorist attack, there were people that said that there was deaths all over the place. You know, like unofficially there were over, you know, I'm trying to remember. Somebody said that there were like close to 20 people died, you know, and all these things like this. Nobody died at that. There was
one lady died.
That's what I'm getting at. The only person that died was one of the protesters, who I still have a hard time with this guy's explanation. And I'm going to say something here that probably really get us kicked off, you know, if anything else.
It hardly matters at this point. We're always kicked off.
He was black. The Capitol Police officer was black. She was white. If it was reversed, I'm telling you right now, and the video that we've seen,
his life would be ruined.
There would be an investigation. He would be arrested. He would have been put in jail.
And there would have been, until that happened, there would have been riots every night.
Every night. So
there's very little doubt of a double standard. I don't think you'd make the argument that there's not a double standard. It's glaringly obvious. I hope it's glaringly obvious to everyone. So Merrick Garland said, by the way, in his little thing here, and this is him being quoted, the central norm is that in our criminal investigations, there cannot be different rules depending on one's political party or affiliation, Garland said. There cannot be different rules for friends and foes. And that is the first thing I agree with. So, but I think he's flat out lying when he says that. I think that we are, I think the Democratic Party, the left wing, holds all the power. I think the Republican leadership is weak, cowardly. I don't know that they should be lowering their standard of behavior any further than they have, except that the left is willing to play dirtier than the right, it seems to me. The right is what the right does have is the American people, right? The silent majority. The Republican leadership is going to have to answer to those people eventually, right? So the reality of our situation in America right now is that 99% of the violence has come from the left. And the people that know how to do violence, that have the guns, the right, have not really risen up yet. And I'm afraid they will. And they will do so efficiently. They're not going to be looting footlockers. They're going to be killing people.
Well, let's hope and pray that never happens.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that, look, we've had this conversation. You and I agree that there's going to be some sort of, I want to use it in the right way, civil war. And the civil war will be where states say, no, we've had enough. We're not going to do it that way. We're not going to send you money. We're going to talk about even leaving you because of what you're doing. We've already seen these things happen. The state of Florida that we live in has said no to mandates, has said no to critical race theory, has said no to all these other different things, agendas that the left has, because we have a strong constitutional governor who says these things are unconstitutional. Not that he's not against vaccines. Good gosh, this guy's done more than anybody else as far as vaccines go. But he does not say that they should be mandated. And you should not get fired. If he finds out that you're doing this to people, he's coming after you. So we've seen this. We saw it in Texas, where Texas said, listen, we're going to build the wall. We're going to build the wall. But let's talk about this. We're going to build a wall on private property. You can't say, federal government, you can't say anything to us. We're going to build this wall. But when they go to the federal government and say, hey, can we buy this wall material that is sitting here doing nothing but rusting? Can we buy it and use it? The federal government turns around and says, no. There's a war right there. There's a little war right there.
Those sections of fence, by the way, are already paid for. We're just not installing them.
Exactly.
So we wasted money. They wasted taxpayer money on that.
I am hoping and praying that that's the type of civil war that we run into, where I am more concerned than anything else. And this is where I get this. You and I talked about this because of an article that I had heard last week about the group that was charged with hatching a plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Whitmire.
So this is an interesting. If we talk about setting these things up. In other words, if we talk about Antifa maybe orchestrating or leading this riot on January 6th, then and you say, well, that there's no precedent for that. Well, there is kind of a precedent for that in Michigan, in that it seems like the FBI has set those militia dudes, those right-wing militia dudes, up with this plot to kidnap the governor. It seems to be their idea, and they had the resources. They were raising up the personnel within the militias to do it. So it's a classical case of entrapment.
You know, and when you read something like this, the first thing that you want to do is go out and check your sources, because you want to look for sources that are kind of like, don't lean down the middle. I mean, lean down the middle, or not far right, far left. Yahoo News, which I consider one of the further left than most people, had the Washington Examiner's article on their page, right on their page, that said FBI informants had bigger role in Whitmire kidnap plot than thought, the report says.
Yeah.
And it goes on, and it talks about 14 members tied to the paramilitary group Wolverine Watchmen were arrested in connection with a 2020 scheme to kidnap the Democratic governor. But when you go and read it, the guys who put this together were FBI informants that found these. And listen, I don't know these guys. I don't want to call them knuckleheads, but that's kind of how I feel about it at this moment in time.
Yeah, I don't mean to be condescending.
Yeah,
but
I don't mean to be condescending. They may be nice guys and stuff like this, but when somebody walks into your house and starts talking about somebody, could
somebody convince me to go kidnap Ron DeSantis? No.
Yeah.
I mean, so it has to be. They have to have the heart to receive that, just to have that conversation.
Well, yeah. First off, I mean, seriously, these were strangers to them. They might have known them in the past, but we're not talking friends. I mean, I'm just not going to have this guy come over to my house and after a couple of drinks of alcohol, he goes, hey, you know what I've been.
And they voted one president of their little group or something, didn't they? Or vice president or secretary or something?
Yeah, he was. It talked about that one of them got in and got to be so well known and liked that he ended up being part of their government. You know.
Yeah, he's probably throwing around that government black money and buying guns and buying beer and everything that these people love.
But we have to understand something here. There is a pattern. We have to look at the pattern.
Yeah. I mean,
they went after Trump on the Russia collusion, the FBI.
So that's the Department of Justice. This is disturbing. So
this is very
the
disturbing.
Department of Justice was weaponized against the political opponent while that political opponent was the president. Does that make sense? So that is almost insurrection. That is almost sedition. I mean, that is what they're charging these January 6 people with.
False documents, use false documents, all these different things that they did on a president of the United States. And we are not screaming from the rooftops about what's going on here. Let me point out another one real quick. The Justice Department was notified that the parents that were upset about critical race theory and masking and no school in Virginia were domestic terrorists.
Yeah.
And they wanted them investigated.
And they did. I mean,
do you know? Let me just throw something out.
So we
here.
did a show about that, and that is congratulations to those parents that really stood up to. That was David and Goliath kind of thing, and they stood up and said, and if it's your kids, I think you're more willing to, right? That mama bear instinct, but these people stood up and said, "No way, these are our kids."
This is what we have to do.
And so, but are we willing to do that for our nation? Are we willing to do that for our churches?
Let's just start local. Let's start local. 2020 is going to be for the House and the Senate. Let's bring people in that we want in D.C. that are going to represent us and not represent the swamp. It is truly the swamp. Listen. People, I don't think you understand how deep this goes. And Kevin and I might not be here next week just because of what we're about to say. Well, I'm going to say it.
I ain't going down with you, bro. You're on your own.
There are a lot of good people in the FBI. Do not think that there's not. There are a lot of good people in the FBI. There are a lot of good people in police departments. But you have to understand something. In order to start an investigation on somebody, you have to write an incident that says, I am going to look at this person. I tell people all the time, they would come to me and say, hey, can you run this license tag number for me? No, I can't.
There has to be a probable cause. Is that Fourth Amendment privacy?
Yes. It has to have some sort of investigation going. And when we talk about investigation, listen, There's different ways that we can word this, and you have to be careful when you listen to some of these people because they will word it to where Jim Howard today on this show, talked about, a civil war, and they can cut and paste all the things that you want to do. That's why we have to make sure that we back these up on a secure network somewhere that we can use it in court to protect us.
They are onto us already, Jim.
I have a feeling they are.
I think big tech is onto us.
Well, good. But here, hey, there's other platforms we need to start looking at.
And I just joined Getter or whatever because Joe Rogan did.
Yeah.
But on that note, guys, you're watching this, share this. I mean, if we're halfway through it and you're still watching, get it shared.
If you haven't clicked off of it because you go, oh, they've lost our minds.
On that note, Wendy's asking online, did the FBI set up the January 6th events the way they did the plot against the governor or the whole thing with Russiagate?
Well,
are these things in spirit connected?
I personally think that they are. I think that this is a way that you can look. These people are that devious. I don't understand where people are not seeing this. You go look. How far did it go up the chain of command? We know Hillary Clinton was involved in it. We know that. We have the facts that show that.
Comey and Clinton.
Comey and Clinton.
And by the way, I'm old enough to remember when both sides of the aisle were saying what a stand-up guy Comey was. This is when the Republicans still wanted to get Trump too.
Yeah.
Before they realized they have to get on the Trump train to survive politically. When they were still Ryan or whatever the guy's name was in charge of the Congress. But anyway, they were saying that Comey, the Republicans were saying as well that Comey was a stand-up guy, that you could absolutely trust his integrity, and I didn't know much about him, but what I learned about him in those press conferences and hearings was he was a snake.
Sure, he was.
He would say whatever he had, and so the Republicans were were for 2 years trying to get Trump too.
Yeah, I don't.
So it didn't like the Republicans are incapable of this kind of deception.
Trump came in to drain the swamp, as he talked about it. He came in because, listen. All right, I'll use it on my terms.
Paul Ryan, that's who was in charge.
Paul Ryan, yeah. I'll use it on my terms. We become police officers not to make money. Okay, we become police officers because we believe in what we do. If you end up buying $1 million home as a police officer. Your family was either rich and you just got a huge inheritance, you hit the lottery, or you're taking payoffs from somebody else, kickbacks. I have seen police corruption at a small level, and I've seen it at a larger level. And when I talk about a small level, we used to have these things where we would put guys in walking districts that would walk the neighborhoods, and they would get to know everybody and all these different things like that. And the next thing you know, they got a lot of power because the neighborhoods like them so much that they would call the chief of police and say, leave this guy alone. Don't touch him. Well, that's the small end of it. But then I also saw where chiefs of police would use their power to investigate people. The people that don't have any criminal records at all, but because they don't like them, they're going to find stuff on. They're going to have files on them. They're going to run their license tag. They're going to run programs that we have as police officers that the FBI has that tells us who their connections are. They're going to look at those connections to see if there's anything they can get them on. I have seen that happen to the nth degree. So to think that the FBI, as much power as they have, would not do something like that, you're just being naive.
Yeah.
You're being naive. And it is a sad state. Like I said, I'm going to go back and say this again so that I have it twice on here. There's a lot of good people in the FBI. But then there's a lot of people. The guy that's in charge of the Justice Department right now, oh my gosh, to go after parents, not to go back and say, hey, listen, I've looked at the videos, they're upset, just get over it.
Yeah,
No.
well, just to not say categorically, we will not be investigating the parents of the children of our school system.
Exactly.
I mean, that is, unless you can come up with something very real. And if they were threatening the school board, then they've committed a crime. But if we say we voted you in, we can take you out, they're threatening to vote them out, not take them out literally, right? Not have them whacked. But that's easy. But the bottom line is this, Jim, and so we're in the second half of the hour here, so we're going to start talking church, but they are intentionally misleading people. They are intentionally misusing their power they have to gain more power. So what do I tell my flock? How do I negotiate my family, myself, my family, and my church through such misinformation, through such one-sided, deceptive media
It's
and politics.
Yeah,
for
it's
that
not
matter.
going to be easy because the devil is so. I mean, he is manipulating so many people right now that we have to we have to cling to Jesus Christ. I mean, this is going to be difficult. This is not going to be easy because what we have seen so far, and we have to blame ourselves. We have to blame ourselves, and we have to cry out to God so that He hears us, and He starts to put the power of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, back into our bodies, that we stand up strong for what we believe in and what we think this country was built on. And this country just got back from Williamsburg. They used the Bible. They used Bible teachings when we created this country more than anything else. And we created the greatest country in the world. We have been the greatest country for so long. And we're starting to slide, and we're starting to we're starting just to fall apart as far as our morals go because we allowed the public to teach our kids what is right and what is wrong. And they're teaching them things like critical race theory. They're teaching them about sex is okay. They're teaching them that living together is okay. They're teaching them that the sex that you're born, don't you know.
Well, when did here's what I don't understand, and I blame. I'll be honest with you. I blame the parents.
All of us. Yeah.
But when did it become the role of the school to teach our children right from wrong? And I will say it's when the parents stopped doing that, and partially because both parents in the 70s, both parents began to have to work, right? My mother went to work in the 70s when I was a kid. But that's not good enough. So I don't need the school board or the government teaching my kids right from wrong. So I do like that they teach them math and English and science and history. I like and I'm one of those parents that have conversations with my kids.
Right.
But should my school be teaching my kids morality? And by the way, should a secular school, I would say a Christian school, perhaps if they're biblical and scriptural, but not every Christian school is those things, and so therefore they should be laying off the morality thing too. But for my kids anyway. But should we be trusting the government or politicians or teachers unions or the media? Should we be trusting them to teach our kids right from wrong? Why are Christian parents allowing that to happen if they're allowing it to happen?
Well, you got two questions there. First off, you say, why are parents allowing that to happen? That's going to be the end answer. The first part of it is, when you and I went to school way back, we were taught to respect our elders. We were taught to treat each other as we want to be treated. We were taught all these different good moral values.
Which worked, I'd say.
Which worked, right. Now, they might not have been teaching the Bible as saying that this is where this comes from, but they were still teaching us those type of moral values. In today's school, they're teaching you that Johnny over here who's white is, has been,
it's inherently racist.
Yeah, racist.
Has subconsciously benefited from his race. So
and then Bobby over here who's black is oppressed. Yeah. And they can't play with each other anymore because of that difference. Yeah. All of a sudden you've got separation. And so we got away from the basic foundations of what we taught.
The things that got us progress in the first place, that got us this far. So they want us to believe that things are worse now than they were in the 40s and 50s, which is absolute insanity.
It is.
So but then what is the spirit behind that? So church, if you're listening, what is the spirit of division? Who is the author of lies and division? And who? So then who is not? Right. So if these things are real, then Christians join arms with the world and fight this evil together if needed. But until you can prove these things are real, and I think they failed to prove any of this is really real, measurably real, then Christians have to understand that there is biblical precedence for judging people one man at a time, right? By judging them by the content of their characters. Biblical precedence for not judging people by the color of their skin.
Exactly.
And to do anything else then is unscriptural. Right. So what they're saying is you need to judge this person because they're black, they don't stand a chance, which by the way is terrible doctrine. and killing an entire demographic
Yes.
of generations in this country. And now that the narrative has become, because of the color of their skin, these folks all think alike. These folks are all against you. These folks are all against you. They are taking it's the exact opposite of what Martin Luther King and the civil rights leaders of the '60s, which was before my time. But I mean, I was born in '67, so by the '70s, I was understanding a little bit of what was going on.
Right.
They're using the exact opposite narrative now that they were using that made all the difference in the world just a generation ago, right? So how do we discipline or prepare our flock to hear them make their arguments? Don't reject their right to make that argument. Recognize the image of God even in your enemies, right? But always make biblically Christ-centered decisions when it comes to social issues like socialism or like racism or homophobia or anything like that. What does the Bible say? That's my way of guiding myself and my kids through that, and I would. So then it has to be the way I would guide my church through that as well. I can't have a separate way of doing it in my home, and a separate way of doing it publicly or within the church. That makes sense?
Sure. And I think one of the okay, go back to what you said. How do we put an end to this? How do we stop? It's unfortunate that parents work 2 jobs. There was a study I remember a while back where they talked about the first couple of years of a child's growth, and that when parents worked 2 jobs, that they would get up in the morning, they would feed the child, maybe feed the child. They would both be off to work. They would have a house sitter or somebody to stay with the child, or they would be in like a daycare center. The parents would come pick up the child or come and relieve the person. They would have dinner, and then they would have 20 minutes with them before they put them to bed.
I lived like that, by the way, with my kids at one point or another.
Yeah, I mean, my
as
mother
a single
lived like
father.
that. My mother worked 4 jobs. I mean,
and my home life as a kid was without structure. Once my mother went to work.
I constantly say, it's only through God's grace that I just had lunch with one of my brothers that retired as a captain with the police department, and then went on and worked with another city as a planner for 20 years. I mean, I'm just amazed that none of us ended up in jail because of our childhood, our life. But, we have to go back to our children and make sure that they understand that we are there for them at all times. We have to talk to them about how to treat people and how to respect people and how God is so important in our lives. We have to show it to them. We have to make sure that we're the example. After they reach a certain age, they watch us. They imitate us. If like I imitated my dad, I worked a hard life. I mean, I worked really hard because that's what I saw in him. And I saw how he treated people. And I saw how those different things that he taught us. We need to be teaching the same thing. If somebody, I had 2 scenarios that I kind of talked about this that happened on Christmas, like kind of Christmas Eve service. And I talked to you about it, where I could have taught the guy that was standing there with me the wrong way to handle the situation. But I taught it as a watchman who his number one responsibility, and he realized what his number one responsibility was, and that was to make disciples of other people, to bring them to Christ. I worked it that way. Now, at the same time, I'm watching for, something that could be of danger, but this is the way that we need to be living with everybody. We continuously stay on our toes, watch, be as peaceful as doves and as sharp or as serpents, because we have to be prepared for what is happening. And what we're seeing in front of us right now is leading this country to where they're going to start coming after the church. You have to understand the church is going to be a part of this.
Yeah, so I'll say that we talked about this before, but they have to come after the church.
They have to.
It's not that they will eventually get to it. The church is the head of the beast that they see,
yes.
Right? So if conservatism is a snake, you cut the head off the snake to defeat him, right? So you get rid of the shepherd and the flock scatters. So they have to come out. The church, Christianity, Judeo-Christian values are the head or the heart and soul of conservatism. The only way to crush conservatism completely is going to be to crush the church. So it's not a matter of if they come for the church, but when. And by the way, they're coming already. Right. And by the way, the church on a lot of levels is acquiescing, is surrendering.
Sure. We've seen we've talked about that. You're absolutely, and that's the other thing that you and I talked about. They will pick a religion. I mean, we've seen things that the Pope has said that you and I've shook our head at. And I'm not a Catholic, but to hear what the Pope says, I'm just kind of like, what? They will pick a church. They will make it the church of the country.
And they will do this. Yes, if not officially, they will do this, and they've begun to do this. They will limit what you're allowed to say. Right. So your message on Sunday to be on social media is going to have to be not offensive, not just to Christians, but to people outside of the
right.
church.
Right.
So if you say Jesus is the Son of God, if you have a Trinitarian message, which I do, then that will not be allowed on social media because that offends Unitarians, that offends Muslims, that offends Buddhists, that offends Jews, that offends everybody.
Atheists.
So that's got to go. Yeah. So ultimately that's who they're protecting. Let's be honest. So there will be a bleached out, washed down, purified version of the gospel that will be permitted in social media and in the public square. And if I do not change my how I profess the gospel to people,
right,
then it will be silenced, and it has been.
Well,
silenced.
It will be called hate speech.
Yeah, it's already happening to me. So, I mean, I'm not telling you something that is theoretical. It's already happening.
Yeah.
So, it is the people that will be allowed to evangelize will be people that have a very watered down, non-offensive gospel message. Now, here's the thing about the gospel message: if it should be offensive to sin, and we're all sinners, so the gospel should trigger conviction in everybody, inside and outside of the church. If you're a pastor, every Sunday you leave church feeling so good about yourself. I love my church because my pastor makes me feel so good about myself. He's leaving parts of the gospel out. Right. Now, I don't want to break people. I don't want people leaving my church feeling bad. I want to leave them hopeful, but they can't be under the impression that they are in any way deified or to be left in their sin by a gospel message. So Jesus, I say this a lot, but Jesus loves you right where you are is a powerful opening to a message, to a sermon. It's a dangerous close. If you finish with Jesus loves you right where you are, that Jesus wants you left in your sin, that Jesus does not want you to reject your sin and repent of your sin, you're not really delivering a gospel message. That's going to be the gospel that's permitted in America. And that will be the death of the church.
To tie up
largely.
To tie up your point, we need to be leaving convicted that we can be better than we are.
Exactly right. Not guilt.
Not
conviction.
Guilt. Yeah, not guilt. Not guilty that we need to be better, but convicted that we can be. And like when we look, here's one of the things that does bother me about the church. And trust me, I love my church. If anybody's listening from the church, please do not take this the wrong way. But I don't think we talk enough, and I know that that's not what my pastor wants to do. But I think men inside the church should be talking about what we're talking about right here.
Yeah.
Men inside the church should be talking to the church, and not on church property maybe, but getting guys together and going out and sitting in a coffee shop and talking about some of the things that we're talking about here. Because we have to start opening the eyes up of those that have been blinded for so long, thinking that these people are for us. They are not for us. We live in the great state of Florida where we do have a governor who is for us. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, there's probably something out there that I'll give you a good example.
think we're in the freest state,
right,
in the union right now.
A friend of mine, when DeSantis,
that hasn't always been the case. When I moved here 30 years ago,
sure.
We had Lawton Childs was governor, right? And we were kind of a purple state for the first
for
decade of
for
my
a long
Floridianism.
Hey,
I was a Democrat back then, so.
But I'm going to say this. The mindset of the people need to start looking at how good we do have it here, because we're so jaded by listening to, all these different news channels that do nothing but talk about how bad he is. He came out when he was trying to get more vaccines out to people, and he said, "I'm going to do this with Publix." Now, a Miami Democratic mayor is the one who suggested using Publix to DeSantis. DeSantis thought it was a good idea and went with it. Okay, because why? We have a Publix on every corner.
Yeah.
People came out and said, "Oh, it's because Publix pays DeSantis."
Not people, the media.
Yeah, media.
The media tried to make that a thing,
right?
And
right.
so, and we have to be able to see that when it shows
But
itself.
I have friends of mine who bought that hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
You know, before doing their own. This is why I said
it's intellectually
there
lazy.
needs to be men and women out here that get together and talk about this. You know, here's a great place to listen to it, folks, right here where we're talking about it, and then start to share this so that other people can see it.
Just start reading the articles. Try not to develop your worldview, your opinion based on the headlines, right? I watched a video, by the way, of a woman trying to pigeonhole DeSantis on that very thing.
Yeah.
And the video that they put up on there, it was a local Florida news station, they showed that video, and then they showed the headline was DeSantis bullying a woman reporter.
Right.
So, but then they also had the entirety of the video, and it is clearly not that he was just being a bully and dismissive. He explained himself 3 different ways to this woman who, like a robot, kept coming back to the same conclusion, to the point where he said, "It's not true. You're crazy. I'm going on." But they made it seem like that's how he treated her right out of the gate, because that's how they would have treated him given the opportunities. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just happened to see something, and this is one of these things that scare me, you know. This Western Journal, and like I said, I know nothing of the Western Journal. I don't even know where they're located. I have no clue.
I've heard of them, but I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I can't. Well, their thing is.
What's it called? Western Journal? I'll look it up.
Equipping readers with the truth.
If you can't tell what it is, it's probably right wing.
Yeah, but here was one of the things that the article was very good because it just kept talking about a study that was done with Real Clear. Let me see who they said the study was done. Real Clear Investigations talked about the 2020 riots and the December the 6th. And it just compared both of them. And you just go down and look at it, and you're going, oh, my gosh, oh, my gosh, oh, my gosh. Okay. But here's a question they ask you. Do you think conservatives are viewed as enemies of the state in Biden's America? Now, that's
Absolutely.
a question there. Okay. Sure. You and I would say yes. But you know what they want next? They want your email address. Now, I'm sorry. I'm not going to answer this poll, because I don't want to be on this email list.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
And the
now
who made the poll? I mean,
completing this poll entitles you to the Western Journal news updates free of charge. You can opt out at any time. You also agree to privacy policy and terms of use. You know, but see, if somebody were to subpoena this poll, the court says we want this information. Your email addresses would be out there. They've done it before. They doxed people before.
Well, according to Wikipedia, which, Wikipedia could be anybody. This is Western Journalism is a conservative news outlet. Is an American conservative news political website based in Phoenix, Arizona, founded by political consultant Floyd Brown in 2008. Western Journal founder Floyd Brown also founded Political Action Committee, Citizens United. So it's and served as an executive in Young Americans Foundation. So it is it's definitely a conservative.
Well, Mr. Brown, if you hear this webinar, this podcast that we're doing here, we're promoting your group here because, like I said, the stuff that I'm reading here is very, very, not one way. I mean, it's giving both sides of the story, and that's what we want people to do.
I find that in the Wall Street Journal, they seem to be pretty down the middle.
Yep.
Now here's the crazy thing: if you're on the left, any inclination to the right is considered extremist.
Sure.
And if you're on the right, any inclination to the left is considered extremist. Right. So I find myself too conservative for half the world and not conservative enough for the rest of the world. So you kind of end up drawing your own conclusions,
right.
being your own island in a sense.
Well, yeah, and okay, and let me just finish. I'll finish with this. I mean, I know that we're
trying
getting
to wrap
close.
up.
Yeah,
anyways.
I know that we're getting close.
Yeah.
Very good liberal friend of mine that I consider him a friend had written me one day. He spent a day writing up all these CNN, to what appeared to me, CNN talking points about how bad President Trump was. And how could I live with myself because I voted for a man like this? And getting ready to respond and go down each one of those little bullet points. I mean, there was 30 of them in there. I would have spent a day answering this. And as I'm sitting there, I'm kind of praying to God, saying, please let me be just. Let me be right. Not far right, but let me be a Christian here when I respond to this. And before I could respond to one thing, I felt this little warm answer that said, you only have to respond, you only have to be, answer to one person. You don't have to answer to him. You don't have to answer to any of these things that are out here. You only have to answer to one person, and that is me. So he said, stop it. And I just stopped, and I called my friend on the phone, and I said, buddy, I only have to answer to one person, and I'm answering to my God. And he's a Christian, and he said, well, but God wouldn't. I said, okay, let me help you out on this. Trump is pro-choice. Trump is pro-life. Trump is pro-life. So whoever is pro-life is who I believe in and will follow. Now, some of the things that you want to point out here, nobody's perfect. Show me a perfect man.
And I didn't vote for him because I wanted him to be my spiritual leader.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
So I don't get my doctrine from him any more than I get it from Oprah.
Right.
Right. So people get very upset that how could you, and I didn't really want to vote for him, but I didn't feel like I had much of a choice, Hillary being the other one. But he did a better job as president than I thought he was going to do. He lasted longer than I thought he was going to last. The left had me rooting for the guy.
Yeah.
They had me hoping he did well.
Right.
In the beginning, in the first few years, because they were so hard after him. I can't believe he lasted 4 years. I really can't. So I have to say that as a Christian, for a Christian to make that argument means that they would only be able to vote for people that made every decision based on they would have to be pro-life, they would have to be anti-death penalty, they would have to be almost libertarian in their views. They would have to be that kind of conservative for that argument to make sense. Right. So if he's saying that you are guilty of voting for this guy because of these reasons, right? Then you have to make mount a defense then for yourself, not for me, of how did you vote for somebody that was pro-choice, right? How do you vote for somebody that is willing to shut down conservative Christian thought?
This gets back to the Bible. Let's get back to the Bible. How do you vote for anybody that is against Israel?
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you that right now. You can't show me where.
People that ascribe to replacement theology, people that believe that the church, us, has replaced Israel as God's chosen people. Bad doctrine, if you ask me.
Yep.
But those people would make that argument that the Jews have been cast aside by God's eternal covenant with the people of Israel ended, which doesn't make any sense. If God made an eternal covenant, it doesn't end, right?
It doesn't end.
Or you've got to explain how He made an eternal covenant.
Yeah. How do you know that it ended? Explain that to me.
And then how did God make that mistake?
Yeah.
How did He not see that coming if He's God? Yeah. So there are people that within the church that would make that argument. I don't think they make a very good argument. And so at the end of the day, we got to wrap it up. But at the end of the day, here's the bottom line, Jim. We tend to believe what we hope is true, right? So we want Trump to be a monster, so we believe Trump's a monster. We want Biden to be a socialist, so we believe that Biden is a socialist or driven by socialist people behind the scenes. We want there to be this cabal, this shadow government on some level, so we believe it's there. Now, I happen to believe it's there, right?
Okay.
So we have to be as hard on ourselves as we are on the people around us. We can't hold our enemies to a different standard than we hold ourselves to.  'em. 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 '
if Joe Biden was elected for the reasons why he was elected as a uniter.
Yeah, he was elected for not being Trump. I mean,
he was let's stop. His platform was that he was a uniter. He was going to stop all this hate. I'm working for you. I'm working with you. I want to bring the parties together. I want to get rid of this. I mean, that was the thing that he voted on. I mean, he
Obama
proposed.
did the same thing.
Sure, I agree. What bothers me more than anything else, and I said this to my friend when Obama was elected as president, he goes, you hope he fails. He says, you hope this is, the next 8 years are terrible. And I go, no, I don't, because we're moving backwards. I want to move forward. If Joe Biden would have walked in and said, listen, I really want you to get vaccinated. I understand that you don't want to, and I just wish that, if that's the way you're going to be, okay, fine. We're just going to move forward, and we're just going to keep going. No, he comes out and demonizes those that aren't vaccinated. And people listen to that and now demonize those that aren't vaccinated. And, of course, then the right gets involved in it and says, oh, well, we're going to demonize those that force it upon us. You and I both have talked about it. I always feel like we have to put these disclaimers in here. We've both been vaccinated. We've both been vaccinated. It's not that we're against the vaccine, but it should be a personal choice. Yeah. So he came in and did not do what the American public supposedly was voting him in for. Trump did exactly what he said he was going to do.
And that's the bottom line.
That's
the
bottom line.
You're right. So anyway,
we need to be talking about this, folks.
You brought it up, and I'll close. My final thought will be this: we need to be wise as serpents and peaceful as doves, or whatever the. Say that right?
Yeah.
We need to be.
I think I might have said it wrong. But
understand that we are. He is sending us out amongst wolves, and while we have to recognize the image of God in our opponents, we have to understand that they are cunning, baffling, and powerful, right? So I encourage Christians to use both compassion and discernment. Don't be a doormat, right? We're not called to be a subspecies of any kind. We will one day inherit the earth. Don't be proud. Don't be boastful. Don't be arrogant. Be humble, but be confident in your stance in the Scripture. That's kind of my formula, or hope it is. We love you guys, and we want to thank you for watching the show again this week. If there's anything we can do for you, truechristiantalkinfo@gmail.com. If you need help, you have somebody struggling with addiction or any kind of problems, you simply need prayer, reach out to us. We'll be glad to have you. Want to be on the show, but also be glad to have you. Want us to come out to your event and speak and answer questions?
That would be
glad
cool.
to do it.
Yeah, let's do that.
That's it. And you want to say goodbye to the folks? Or
Yeah, I just preach the truth.
Amen.
And the truth is the gospel of Christ. Preach the truth. And make it simpler for people, because that's what Christ was all about, was taking off these unbelievable weights that the religious leaders during that time were putting on people,
right,
to where they couldn't just simply walk up and say, our Heavenly Father, I need to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And we need to preach that.
Happens to be what I'm preaching about Sunday. Isn't that weird that you brought that up?
No, I'm excited about it. I really am.
All right, we love you guys. We'll see you next Thursday.
God bless you, and God bless this country.
Amen.